Welcome to the session. Welcome to Kreedo's session of activity-based learning in the right way. So this is now the talked about concept everywhere in India. Even the government already started thinking in the same line. It is not that the activity-based learning is not happening anywhere. It's happening, but the right way we mean, there are a lot of misconceptions about activity-based learning. In whole India, we'll be finding everywhere, somewhere the teachers are showing the activities to the children. Making 20 people sit there is not actually the activity-based learning in true sense. Activity-based learning means not showing a cycle video and tell the people to learn that. It is that people have to get hands-on to the cycling and do mistakes and learn from there. That's called true activity-based learning. Means when we create an environment into our school for activity-based learning, it does not mean showing some activities to the children. Means here the children in the environment should trigger, the children should go do the hands-on activities, they practically do it, they make mistakes, they learn from their mistakes. That's actually called the activity-based learning the right way. Today's session is all about that. And that will basically elevate your school from all other schools in your locality. We would definitely see some videos of children doing it. We will start our session with that. Before that, I would just like to tell everyone, in between the sessions, you will be having a lot of questions, and we expect that you will be having any doubt, any kind of questions, you will put to the Q&A box. And all your questions are valuable for us. We will definitely take one-to-one session with you all to clarify all your doubts. Now, let's see how really the children are doing the activities through activity-based learning. Let's go for it.
Okay, the video that you just watched is where you see a child who's working with a language material. This is a material where the child actually is doing reading with reading three-letter words. So you can see a child who's very independently by himself reading the word, and this is what activity-based learning helps the child do. Without the teacher dependency, the child actually is able to learn, and the child is able to learn is what activity-based learning ideally needs to lead up to. We'll see one more video of a child learning math, and we'll also see how the child is independent enough to do a math activity too. So what you see over here is a child working with multiplication. So there's a sum given. The child has the multiplication material kept next to him. He is actually calculating, what is 5 taken 3 times, 5 taken 5 times. And once he finds the answer, the child is able to bring the answer key and keep it on the board. So this is what we're talking about. The main focus of today's session is how to do activity-based learning the right way. When we say the right way, it's making the child independent, building the skill of the child, helping the child build skills, and also reducing the teacher's burden, teacher's dependency. So this is what we're going to demonstrate in today's session. Through while you saw working objects that we see in schools being taught, and that's where a lot of children struggle when they go to higher classes. So how do we build the base through activity-based learning in the early years, such that when the learning goes higher, the child finds it easy to do any of these and do not struggle in the later years. So taking the focus back to some of the materials that we have that we will be demonstrating, these are learning aids. So since we spoke about math and language, let me quickly take you through how math is introduced and how math needs to be introduced. So the very first thing that we do in math is help the child understand visually the difference in quantity, visual difference in quantity. So when I say visual difference in quantity, what I mean is when I have two sets of quantities kept, when there are two sets of quantities kept on in front of the child is able to identify which is less and which is more. This is where we build. So it doesn't directly start with numbers. We bring in quantity, and visual understanding of quantity is what we initially start off with. So when I ask the child between the two, can you tell me which is less? The child is able to clearly identify this. Which is more, they are able to identify this. This gets built as when we go further. So very basic introduction is of the quantity, visual understanding of the quantity, which then moves on to numbers, right? When we say math, we talk about numbers. And here we a little bit focus more on the arithmetic part of it. So when we say numbers, we have the material, which we call it as trace the numbers. The child actually learns symbols through these numbers. This is where the child is able to learn symbols. So the child, by now in the class, the teacher is already involving the child doing activity-based learning also in the classroom by involving the child to say numbers through orally, right? Say 1, 2, 3, 4, which is very important as a part of the learning process, right? Activity-based learning in the classroom, to which we're going to talk about more. But through the material, the child is now going to understand the symbol for that particular number. So the child takes this and they trace it and they say, this is 1. They've heard 1. Now they are associating that name to a symbol. So this is your sandpaper numbers, where the child learns all the 1 to 10. The focus initially, when we begin, when we say numbers, initially it's the L1, the level 1 children. So where we introduce numbers, we focus on 1 to 10. Once they understand the numbers, then comes the sequence part of it. They need to know the sequence of these numbers. Orally, the sequence has been brought in. How do we emphasize? We have this material, which we call it as sequencing puzzle, where basically the child has to find the numbers and place it in a sequence. Say, okay, fine, let's find 1. So this is 1, and the child places it. After 1, then we have 2. Then the child arranges it. Then comes 3, and then we move on to 4, and then we go to 5. In the same manner, the child learns sequencing of numbers from 1 to 10. Eventually, by the end of level 1, we expect the child to know up to 20, and that's what this material helps them build. So we finished visual quantity understanding. We've understood number symbols. The child now knows sequencing. In sequencing, we also introduce a very important concept, which a lot of you would know, is the before, the after number, the before number, the missing number, all of that, which will come through the material, but a lot of that will be built in the classroom through activity-based learning too. Now, the child knows this. Where do we take them next is we help them understand the very important concept, which is critical for this level, is counting. When you look at operations, you have addition, you have multiplication, subtraction, all of these operations, the base of which is in counting. So counting is a very important concept that needs to be introduced to the child, and this material helps them build counting. So can you see that's why this material also has rings of different colors up to 10. Now, how do we introduce it? First, the child just understands. The very first thing we said was visual understanding of quantity. So they're also going to understand the visual understanding of which is more, right? So they arrange these rings in a manner that it is very clearly visible to the child that 1 is lesser than 2 or 2 is more than 1. So when they arrange all of these rings, it's very clearly visible. Now we bring in the counting part of it. Let's count. We place it and we say 1, 1, 2. All of this is done by the child. And it's when the child does it, it's just play for them. They're just putting it back and saying 1, 2, 3. This is how the child does it, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the way that we introduce counting for the child so that they're able to do, and the counting happens all the way from 1 to 10. So not just one, counting, like I said, is a very critical concept in L1. So you have multiple materials that the child needs to go through where the counting is introduced. And when we say counting, it starts from orally saying 1 to 10 in a sequence. Then it moves on to giving a quantity, and they're able to actually count the quantity. If I just randomly place these rings and tell them, can you tell me how many do we have? The child should be able to count and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and say we have 5. The next comes when we are able to bring in the association of the numbers. They know the symbols. Now they need to be able to associate this quantity with a number. And so when I say how many rings do you have, the child says 5. I ask the child, can you bring 5 and keep it next to it? The child is able to place it next to it. So you're taking the child to the next level of number association with the quantity, and happens both the ways. If I say what number is this, the child should be able to say this is 6, and they should be able to get us 6 rings, count and get us 6 rings. It works both the ways. So we have taken the child through all of these concepts through activity-based learning. The child is playing, the child is counting, the child is mixing it up. They place 1. Let's say when they count, they mix and match. So automatically the material is done in such a manner that they themselves tell the child, okay, there is an error. So there's something wrong over here. Can we find what is wrong? So let's try and replace it and see, okay, when we count, 4 rings go over here and only 3 rings go over here. So the material brings in the possibility of learning by making error, which helps the child understand concepts a lot more better and a lot more stronger. So this is counting. And when we take it further, the child goes through the process of counting, and then we take it further to help them understand the next level of numbers, wherein you have we understood before number, after number, we know missing numbers. Now we need to, when I give 2 quantities for the child or 2 numbers to the child also needs to be able to say which is the bigger number or which is a smaller number. I bring in 2 numbers and I say between these 2 numbers, which is bigger. The child needs to be able to identify 9 is bigger than 6 or 6 is smaller than 9. And that happens through a lot of activities. While counting sets the base for it, it eventually is built in the classroom through a lot of activities the teacher does, with whether it's an activity through the board or activity where the teacher uses other things which is there in the classroom to be able to bring in. So activity-based learning in different manner needs to be brought to the child. Different flavors need to be brought into the child for them to understand, but the crux of it should be through activity-based learning. So moving on, once a child understands, so we know that one child has gone through all of these process, how do we build it to the next level, right? They know numbers till 20 now. Like I mentioned, till L1, they need to know numbers till 20. We help them understand these numbers step by step by scaffolding them and going from 1 to 10, and then 11 to 20 on all of these things. Next, when we take them further, while the child in L2, they go through the process of some bit of revision which happens, then they move on to the very important concept of further level of number to quantity association through the place value. This is the material which we call it as a place value. And you have the number cards which comes along with the place value. Let's understand how do we introduce. We all learn place value at a very later stage in our school, right? So place value was which came to us, which was introduced to us only when we were in 5th standard, 6th standard, but through simple activity-based learning, right? The simple play way, the child actually learns simple things as what are units, what are tens, what are hundreds, what are thousands, and they enjoy this whole process. I'm going to show you how enjoying this whole activity is, which brings in the whole understanding of learning also happens, while learning happens through fun, or you can say through play, play being the crux of it over here. So the child is introduced to place value. Before I go into the demonstrating of the material, I'd want to quickly show you how is that we are also going to help the child get to the level of being able to apply it in the book. So taking a simple, we have a book, which is an L2. This is an L2 book. This is a mathematics L2 level workbook that we have. Is a mathematics workbook that we have. And the very first chapter in level 2 that we introduce after, of course, the revision is the place value, right? When we introduce the place value, this is the place value chapter that we're talking about. This is the place value chapter. You would see this is the chapter that we are talking about. This is the place value chapter. And then I'm just going to the last page of this place value chapter, quickly bringing in attention to some of these images over here. So you have, this is the last page, so it's a review page. It says, write the numbers as instructed. 10 more than. The child needs to identify this quantity and then say what is 10 more than. Or we talk about what, right, which is the tens in each of these numbers. Or identify the hundreds or the ones or tens in this number. Can you count this quantity and write how much is it? Right. So this is what the child is going to achieve by the end of the place value chapter. How do we get that? How do we ensure that the child is able to do this for 2-digit, 3-digit? The focus being on for a 2-digit number. Till now we are focused until 20, but when we say 2-digit, it's up to 99. But the child very easily does it. So how do we get there? I'll come back to this book again to show you how we get there is through simple activities. So we have the place value. The very first simple thing that I do is I introduce the names for this. Right. I'm just going to go with these 3 names. Okay. Unit, 10, 100, and 1,000. Repeat again. Unit, 10, 100, and 1,000. Now I'll ask the child, can you show me 10? The child should be able to point it out. Can you show me 1,000? How about a unit? Can you show me unit, please? Can you show me 100? So this is, the child learns a very basic thing of knowing, identifying what each of it is. And if you look at the way the material is also done, it clearly shows, the increase in quantity for each of it. The next thing that we do is the child knows counting, right? We have already introduced counting, but we bring in counting through the place value. How do we do that? Okay, so we first tell the child, let's place each of the quantities. This is unit. This is the 10. This is the 100, the way that we have introduced it, right? And this is the 1,000. Now, let's count and arrange. 1 unit. 1 unit, 2 units. 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units. 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 unit, 4 units. So hence, in the same manner, the child continues to count until 9 units. So After 9 units, we'll move on to the next place value, which is 110, 110, 210. This is simple counting. We are not introducing anything higher. It's very simple counting. 110, 210, 310, all the way till 9 tens. I'm just skipping a few steps over here so I can quickly demonstrate it. Now, after 910, what happens next is your next place value, which is 100. So this is 100, 200, 300, right? So 100, 200, 300, so on till 900. The focus here is just 2 digits, but I'm just going to till 3 digits, and then just be introducing the next place value is 1000. So this is called as the child is being introduced to counting of quantity. Now, the similar manner, while the child knows the counting of quantity, we need to also bring in numbers, right? Association of numbers is the next thing. Once you have quantity, then the association of numbers need to happen. So to do that, we have these number cards with us. We have these number cards. So we're going to tell the child, let's arrange the numbers. I'm just going to take a few numbers just to show it to you. You have, I hope it's visible. You have 1 unit, then we have 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, 5 units. For the demonstration, I'm just going to leave it at 5 units, but you have all the way till 9 units. Now you go on to the next place value. You have 110, 210, 310, 410, 510. Similarly till 910, and then we move on to 100, 200, 300, 400, and 500. And of course, we also place the 1000. Just since keeping the constraint of the place, I'm just going to show you till the 300, so till the 100th place value. Now the child knows the names. They know to count the quantity. They also know how to count the numbers. What we move on to next is, like I said earlier, we associate the quantity with the number. Simple activity, right? What are we going to do? We're going to take a few quantities. Randomly, I'm going to pick a few quantities and we'll tell the child, let us count. So let me take a few random quantities. Okay, so what am I going to do is I am going to count. They know counting by now. They already learned counting. Let's quickly count. 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, 5 units. How many units do we have? We have 5 units. Can we find 5 units here? Child knows this is 5 units. They bring it and they associate it. Simple, right? Now let's count the tens. The child now can count because they know now, right? 110, 210, 3 tens, 4 tens. How much do we have? We have 4 tens. And the child associates. Very simple, just easy activity. How many hundreds do we have? The child counts 100, 200, and they bring it. So it's very easy. That's what has the child done? They've taken a quantity and they've associated the number. We can do the other way around also. Like we said, it always goes both ways, right? I tell the child, can you give me 5 units? A child will go and they will find 5 units. 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 unit, 4 unit, 5 units. This is 5 units. Can we get 4 tens? The child counts 110, 210, 310, 4 tens. Let's get 200s, 100, 200. Easy way of doing it. They can do both of it. Now, do we stop at this? No, we know the child has a capability and we know that the child will be able to do it further. So what do we do next? The child can associate. Now we are going to help the child take it to the next level of reading. How much do we have in total? It's all separate. Now, how do we bring it in total? Is we'll tell the child, let's quickly cover the zeros. So we'll take the units card and let's cover the zeros on 10. Let's take the tens and the units card and cover the zeros on the hundreds. So how much do we have over here? We have 245. 245. So this is how we do simple pointed number association and the reading of numbers. Now, the child not just stops over here, they can go to the next level of saying, okay, now I have 245. How much is 1 more than 245? It's nothing to do with addition. It's just saying how much is 1 more than 245. How do we introduce 1 more? Is we say, let's take 1 more unit, right? And then we place it in the units place. I place it in the units place. So how much units do we have now? How many units do we have now? We have, let's count, 1 unit, 2 unit, 3 unit, 4 unit, 5 unit, 6 units. So we have 6 units. So we're going to replace the 5 units with 6 units now. 10s remain the same, the hundreds remain the same. So how much is 245? 1 more than 245? It's 246. So simple, easy activity where in the same manner we can even do what is 1 less of 246 or 245. We'll take away 1 less, and that's your 1 less. This is how we introduce simple activity to introduce, a reading of numbers, and the child can read numbers up to 1000. They can go beyond that also, but easy method of doing it is through this place value activity based learning. Now, this is what an L2 child does. I already showed it to you. An L2 child actually is introduced to these concepts. And before we go further to see what else is there, let me quickly take you back to that page which I mentioned to you earlier, saying this is there in our workbook. So let's see if the child will be able to do this. Is it possible for the child to do it? I'm just going to bring it closer to the camera. Okay. So we said write the numbers as instructed below. So first the child has to count the quantities. How much do we have? So let's count the units. 1 unit, 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, 5 units, 6 units, 7 units, 8 units, and 9 units. The child writes 9 units. How many 10s do we have? We have 2 10s. Child writes 2 10s. So let's see how much is 10 more than 29. So what will I do? Like we did with the material, we put 1 more, we are going to do 10 more. So when I draw 10 more over here, the child knows 10 more than 29 is 39, right? Write the 10s in each of these numbers. In 40, which is in the 10s place, they know which is 10s, right? 4 is in the 10s place. When we go to the numbers, can you see the association? We spoke about the association of how our books and the materials are also mapped. So how do we bring in the color association is there. You have your yellow, blue, and red. So the child now knows which number, write the number in the place value position as indicated. So in the hundreds place, what number do we have in the hundreds place? It's easy to identify. We have 2 hundreds. So it's easy for the child to do this activity because the child has been introduced to it through the material, through activity-based learning, by letting the child do it. These activities are not done just by the teacher. The teacher initiates it, but the child actually does each of these activity. The teacher steps back after they introduce it, and the child takes it further and they do it. Now, after place value, what happens? Till where can we take it? In L2, the child is introduced to addition. The material which I showed earlier to you, we have the same material which is used for counting can also be used for addition. So where we actually show the child where we can do simple addition. Let's say I tell the child, let's do addition with how much is 3 plus 2. So in this, can we find 3? So we have, this is 3 rings. They know this is 3. Now plus 2. Can we take 2? Now let's put all of it together. How much do we have? The child counts and they say it's 5. Simple addition through counting. And then we take the child further to do addition, 2-digit addition without carryover, then 2-digit addition with carryover also with the place value system. Then we introduce multiplication to the child. We introduce, I'm sorry for that. Apologize. It looks like I'm a little messy and I dropped the material. Don't mind. So this is multiplication material. You saw the child working with this material, if you remember on the video, where the child actually was doing tables. So we have the 5 tables, so we have to 10 tables. So this is multiplication, and multiplication not just through the tables. The child is can also do multiplication independently. If I say how much is 6 taken 5 times, the child is able to do the material through the material, any random multiplication too. And by level 3, multiplication after multiplication, we introduce subtraction. When we talk about subtraction, we think about the word minus, right? Subtraction not just minus. It's about what is, when I say I have 5 rupees and I give away 2 rupees, how much is remaining with you? Or you have 5 rupees, I have 3 rupees. What's the difference between the both of us? Or how much is 8 more than 5? It's 3. So all of these are different variations of introducing multiplication, and with a simple game, we're able to introduce that. And of course, we help the child also understand simple subtraction as well as subtraction with 2-digit subtraction with borrow. Easy, simple, through the activity-based learning. So this is how the math flow happens in, starting from visual understanding of quantity to being able to independently do subtraction through activity-based learning. Now, quickly taking you to the other critical subject that we have, which is basically English. English is a very important subject. Do we all agree to it? English is a very important subject. We as a country, we have a lot of languages that a child is introduced at home. A lot of homes, English is not the first language that is spoken. They have different languages. So we also know that the reason for, where children struggle with English is also, one, the exposure. Second is the complexity of English, where the spellings, right? The complexity of the spellings comes into picture. So how do we ensure that the child not just is able to speak in English? How do we build speaking of English? How do we ensure that the child is easily able to read and write English is what we are going to demonstrate. While language, be it any language, not just Indian languages, other country languages also, is best learned through interaction, through conversation. But when it comes to reading and writing, we need to bring in a method which helps them understand, set the base initially, and that's done through phonics. And the way that Kreedo does phonics is very different from a lot of you. I'm sure a lot of you would already be doing, you already do phonics in your schools, or you know about phonics. But how does Kreedo take it to the level that it makes the child independent in terms of reading? One of the initial videos that you saw, a child reading three-letter word through phonics. How do we get there is what we are going to quickly demonstrate. So one of the initial things that we do when a child comes in L1 is do a lot of vocabulary building activities. When I say vocabulary building activities, rhymes, stories, I show picture cards, we do conversations. What did you eat at home today? How was your day today? A lot of conversation building happens. And then the child is introduced. Like I said, it's a lot of language, teacher-driven activity in the classroom. So it's an equal balance of both. So the teacher actually introduces some of the sounds, saying, what do you hear when I say apple? Child says, I hear a, because I'm emphasizing on a. What do you hear last when I say cat? Right? Child hears t. So we introduce sounds first. It's for oral first. So we introduce the sounds orally through a lot of word introduction, emphasizing on a particular sound. Once a child is understood, like we have introduced the sounds, they know the sounds, they're able to, when the teacher asks them and they're able to identify it, then we move on to introducing the same thing to our material. So this is one of the materials that initially is introduced in L1, which is called as the sandpaper letters, where the child knows the sound similar to the numbers that we had earlier. We are introducing the sound, we are associating the sound to the symbol. Now I trace and I tell the child, this is K. Let's hear a few words. K, kangaroo, K, king, K, kettle. So what sound is this? The child traces this. The teacher shows it first and the child traces it, and they know, they are able to understand the pattern of it also, and they are able to associate the sound with it. So we introduce it through sandpaper, letters, and then once the child knows some of these letters, they're able to identify the symbol. The teacher also brings in a lot of classroom activity where, let's say on a board, the teacher writes multiple letter k sound on the board and multiple a sound on the board, the letter A. And the child, the teacher says, okay, who's going to come and circle all the k sound on the board? The child comes and they circle it. So activity-based learning continues to happen in the classroom in this manner, which we'll show it to you also. While bringing you back to the material, now the child knows the sounds. They're able to tell the sounds in terms of when you ask them, when you give a word and you ask them, what are the sounds that you hear in a word? Sand. They're able to say sand. Now, how do we take it further in terms of reading and writing? And that's where this material of ours, it's called as vowel box, comes into picture. So in vowel box, like you see, we have pictures and we have words, right? And that is also color coded to help the child understand it. And each of these, where specifically what we introduce over here is CVC words, 3-letter CVC words. CVC basically stands for consonant, vowel, consonant, right? So all of these words are CVC words. Now, how do we introduce it? We introduce the child the picture names first, then we help the child identify the sound. But eventually, by the end of working with this material, if I give, let us say I place all of these pictures out and the child has the cards with them, right? So they have all the cards with them. They take the card and they read it. How do they read it? Hat. Hat. What's the word? Hat. They tell the sounds individually, then they blend it together. They blend all the sounds together and then they read. The reading happens when they're able to say hat. Can you find hat? And they match it. Let's take the next word. Let's read the word b, a, g. Let's blend it together. Bag. Bag. What's the word? Bag. Can you find bag here? Yes. And the child is able to match it. So this is how we initiate reading for the child. The child starts with 3-letter CVC words. Quickly taking you a little back, while we have introduced sounds, we have introduced the letters. In L1, we also start introducing a few simple sight words. What do we mean by sight words? These are words which regularly come in a sentence. If I have a sentence, the cat is on the mat, the, on, the is basically sight words. These are certain words like is, he, she, which does not have to be introduced phonetically. These are words the child reads it through patterns. So this simple words are also introduced to the child. By the time they come to level 2, that they are introduced to 3-letter word reading. Then they are introduced to longer word reading, phonetically correct longer words, such as we have a word which is sand, right? Which I already said, or a word like pink. It still is phonetically correct. Pink. They can read longer words. They can read a word like a stamp, which is 5-letter words, still phonetically correct. Including a word like a pumpkin, because it's all phonetically correct. Now we need to go to the next level, right? How do we scaffold it to the next level? The child is able to do so much. We bring in some bit of a simple complexity in terms of the spellings. For example, now it's all phonetically correct. The letter C and H together makes a different sound, which is ch, such as words such as chips, bench, where C and H individually the sound is k, h, but when it comes together it says ch, right? So that's called as phonogram. Then we bring in long sounds. By L3 they're introduced to a more long, spelling complexities comes into picture. By the time they reach the end of UKG, they are able to, or L3, they are able to read sentences with sight words, CVC words, a sentence which has a sight word, CVC word, a blend word, and some of the phonogram words also. And they are introduced to basic grammar such as noun, verb, and adjectives by that time they reach L3. So this is the flow that we take children through. But like I said, while you saw a lot of materials for math, I've just shown you some of the basic materials of language. We have materials for each of the concept that I said. We have, when we mentioned about the CBC word, 3-letter word reading, or when we spoke about blend word reading. So we have some of these materials, but a lot of these reading practices also needs to happen in the classroom because it's teacher driven. Language is teacher driven. A lot of reading which needs to happen, and only then the child is able to is independent. But through the activity based learning, not that the teacher writes a word on the board and the teacher keeps repeating it and the child just doesn't understand. The teacher involves the child in the reading practice. So this is how we actually take the children through activity-based learning to learn all the concepts. While we just focus again on math and language, we have other areas of development also, which we will show it through our material lab setup over here. But before we go there, I've shown you a detailed presentation or this one of place value. Let me quickly show you a video of a child who actually in one of our partner schools who actually was working with place value. Just shifting the focus on the screen to a child who is working with place value. While the video plays, just want to mention that any questions that you have regarding what we just spoke about, please just post your questions in the chat box and we will respond to it in some time at the end of the session. Your child over here who has the numbers, and what the child is doing is they're counting and they're trying to find the quantity for it, and they're checking if they have got the right quantity. The same material that we introduced you, quantity to number association, is what the child is doing independently by themselves. And also they have the book next to them. They're checking the book and they're able to do the activity. Now, going further, we're going to take you through a walkthrough of the materials. Like we said, we just showed you some of the materials. Let me take you to some the other materials that we have displayed over here. What we have displayed over here is about 80 to 90% of the materials. We still have the remaining a lot more materials such as furniture or wall displays, which was a part of the whole package. But just to help you understand the other areas of other areas of development, let us run through the shelves and the materials that we have. So this shelf that you see over here with all these materials, which looks very familiar, I'm sure, because it's these are steel. You have seen some of these items in your at your home also. What will the child learn through this? So this is called as an EPL shelf. EPL stands for exercise of practical life. What we do is we introduce these activities which makes the child independent in the daily life, practical life. So you have a pounding material over here. We have spooning. Using a spoon is a very important part of the child's daily life, right? They use a spoon to eat by themselves, or they use spoon to shift something. So you have spooning. They have where they actually use this pouring activity. They have a jug and they have water. The child needs to learn to hold the jug with water and to be able to control their hand to pour the water into the cups that we have. So this is EPL material. Some of the EPL daily life material that you see over here also are these frames, which has Velcro and which has button. The child, the clothes, the things that they use, which has these, we're making the child, this is a press button, which is a part of their daily life, which we need to make them independent, right? So these are some of the materials that you see over here. A lock box. The child is at home. There are different locks. How do we make them independent enough so that they know how to use the locks is what the child learns through this particular shelf. These are the objectives of this shelf, which is exercise of practical life, EPL. Next, what we'll move on to these two shelves is where sensorial development of the child happens. So a lot of concepts such as colors. So this material, just when you look at it, you know what the child learns. So this is pair the colors. This is through this material, the child learns colors, not just naming of the colors. They're able to put the colors together, mash the colors together. If I keep the colors far away in terms of the memory of the colors also, the child is able to build. Then you have your material, which is visual pairing material. We have different kind of objects given over here, and they need to find the pair for it. These are initial materials that we use in L1 to help child build all of these skills of visual pairing, of identifying, naming and matching of colors, and we have naming of body parts. We have to help the child with understanding different textures. So you have your rough and smooth board. These are the materials that we see over here. Moving on to this shelf, you have a lot more sensorial materials through which dimensions, sizes, and shapes are learned. So you have the geometry board where the child learns different shapes. They're able to pair and learn the different shapes. We have this material, the width stairs. The objective of the material is to identify wide and narrow, right? And not just wide and narrow, to be able to even say widest and narrowest. All of this is introduced. You have the height stairs where the child learns about height. We have these two cylinders through which the child is introduced to tall and short. Can you see this difference in the cylinders? Tall and short, and the other cylinder where the child learns diameter, which is thick and thin. Moving on to the next shelf that we have over here. We have close to 150 to 200 materials, most of which is displayed over here. This is a match shelf. I've already shown all of these materials to you. The sequencing puzzle, the counters, the trace the numbers, the counting rings. You have, this is again your circle sorter, rectangle sorter, triangle sorter, which is part of sensorial, but we just kept it over here. Some of the counting materials, counting ring, quantity box, all of these are counting materials. Just coming and bring you back to a small important part of how the materials are made. We spoke about making the child independent. How is it we can make the child independent through activity-based learning? Is the way that you have designed the materials. Some of the Prodipta did mention at the initial part of the discussion saying there is a wrong assumption about activity-based learning. So what is that wrong assumption? A lot of people go to the market, they bring the materials and they say we are doing activity-based learning. It's very tough to do such activities because one, the materials that you get is not very scientific or thought driven. The simple material over here, the circle sorter, you have different circles, which is of different sizes. The child actually, what does the child do with this material is one, the very initial thing that they learn is to hold it with their 3 fingers, right? A very important part of pre-writing, building a pencil grip, which eventually leads to writing, right? So second is the same material is available in the market where the circles will come of different colors. You'll have red, blue, green, orange, but what we have done is we have kept the same colors, but because we want the child to mainly focus on the difference in the sizes. Also, how does the child work with this activity? The child basically removes all of this. And even without the teacher being there, how is it the child will learn through this material? So this is where experiential learning, activity-based learning to experiential learning, the learning by doing the mistake comes into picture. The material has a control of error. So basically the material tells the child when there is an error which is happening. I did mention about it earlier, but you can see it very clearly over here. The child takes out all of these and they themselves figure out where does it go, right? They, without the child, a teacher being there, they know, okay, I have to find the right size and they do a trial and error. Okay, does it go here? Does it go here? And then eventually they find the right place to put it. So this is the control of error. Do they need a teacher for this? No. The material tells them, okay, you're wrong. Can you please do it by themselves? Again, try it again. See, this is what we have as a part of a material where the control of error is driven into a material so that it's easy for the child to learn by themselves with some bit of a teacher support being there. So this is a higher math that I mentioned to you about addition. We have addition table of 10. We have subtraction. This is a subtraction game. We have number line through which we do addition as well as subtraction. This is the decimal system. The next level of place value is the decimal system through which children actually learn and practice addition, 2-digit addition, 3-digit addition, whether it's simple addition or carryover addition, including subtraction. We also introduce subtraction, simple 2-digit subtraction, 3-digit subtraction, or subtraction with borrow, all of these materials. Taking you to the next shelf that we have over here is our English, the language shelf. So initially the child, before we go into the trace the numbers of sandpaper, we are introducing them. Simple, basic pre-writing skill needs to be built. At the end of the day, it's about building the skill in the child. in various ways. So from the beginning, when the child comes to school, how do we build it? Is with this material where the child actually takes the frame and they learn to color within the frame, right? They don't have a very strong grip. To help them bring that grip and to be able to write within a space, we have the geometric insets. Through shapes, we are actually building. We have done language. This is a very critical part also of the curriculum. Like I said, there are other areas of development. So we have language being one area of development. We have cognitive, where math, sensorial comes into picture, and also EVS comes into picture. So we have science materials, right? The life cycle of butterfly, the life cycle of hen. Then we have the landforms, which is introduced to the child, thing which is in the landforms. Simple understanding of what is a lake and an island. The child pours water into this material and they understand what is a lake and an island. This is a world mold. The child pours water. They learn the names of continents. They know the names of oceans. We have the maps over here. We have the India map, where by L3, the child learns the names of all the states. And when I say science, we have this material, which is called as a 3-part card. While the visual pairing, which I showed you initially, had big pictures, through this material, the child actually learns the names of parts, but also builds visual pairing to a very minute level. We have a highlighted part, and the child learns the name part. So this is how we bring in science. And also, of course, you see the solar system, one of the very enjoyable material as a part of a curriculum. Children actually work with the solar system. This is the sun, and they learn the names of the planets. They understand how the planets rotate around the sun. So this is the complete setup that we have. And we have shown you the demonstration of some of the materials. Let me take you back to understanding. I kept mentioning multiple times during our discussion about activity-based learning in multiple variations, right? You have activity-based learning, which happens through materials, through learning aids, but it should not stop there. We need to bring in various flavors of activity-based learning, but in the right way, the right method. It needs to start with materials. It needs to start with making the child use materials, learn concepts, build skills independently through the materials. And then it goes into the classroom, where the teacher involves the child, engages the child, and tries to introduce or revise the same concept in the classroom. So before we go further to take questions from you or answer some of the questions we generally get, just playing a few videos of how activity-based learning in the classroom is driven by Kreedo and how does it happen. Let's play just 2 quick videos of children and the teacher in the classroom. Yeah. So once we are finished with the video, we will go ahead and we'll take some of the questions also. Again, yeah. So this is a video of a teacher doing activity-based learning for subtraction. Can you see the engagement of the child? Can you see the involvement of the child in the activity? So at the end of the day, it's all about how do you engage the child? How do you make the child the part of the learning process? Yeah. Yes, we have another video. Just going to quickly complete the video before we go further. So this is this one where the child, it's language, it's an English activity, right? Generally, how would we see it? Is the teacher is pointing to the board and the teacher is reading the sentence, and the child may or may not be involved and just is in their own world and they're just repeating of the teacher. Yeah. So here the child is reading the sentences by themselves. So one by one, the teacher involves multiple children to come and read the sentences. Similarly, they also do it for word reading. So this is the demonstration that we had to do. Now, let's just quickly move on to some common questions that we get from customers. We'll address that.
So thank you, everyone. I'm just been amazed by seeing the interest of everyone and the kind of interest coming from the people that this is the kind of things we want to do in our schools. Really not expected. And now I would be just playing a role, because this kind of questions we have got from the market, got from the schools, got from the owners. Really, these questions sometimes maybe a representative questions from you all. I would try to put 2 or 3 most important. Apart from that, I know it won't be end, and there will be a lot more questions and answers is required from us. We would definitely take one-to-one session after this, and we will take care about all your queries. So the first question, actually, I want to put it. Normally, I have seen a lot of people asking, is it really required, Shobika, my colleague, if I'm asking, is it really required for a LKG children to learn 1,000?
Why not is the question. Why not? First, let's understand the importance of the age. We're talking about early years. We all know the capability of the child. We were an era where we didn't know about mobile phones. Now you have a child who, without the parent knowing, they know how to use a mobile phone. Absolutely. Right? They just know how to open this one. I've heard instances where a child has just ordered something from Amazon and it comes to the home.
This happens.
And the parent is wondering, saying how it happened. That's a capability of the child. We also know they can learn so many multiple languages. We understand, we have heard it around us saying the child has a capability. They are able to do multiple things. They learn from the people around them. Now, we just need to identify that there is a possibility, but we also need to understand what is that the child enjoys the most, which is basically play. So what we have brought in is, we understand the capability, we brought in what they enjoy, and together, when we introduce activities through play to them, the learning becomes better, right? Learning becomes higher. And yes, because they have the capability that you introduce 1,000 through activity-based learning, like the way that we did, the child will be able to do it. And we have schools, we have children who have done it. It's not something that we are talking, saying they will be able to do it. We have seen it, and it's proven that the child is able to do it. It's just that we as adults need to change our mindset to say, "Bachcha hai, nahi kar payega." They are able to do it. It's just that we need to introduce it in the right way for them to learn.
And I have really got this answer correctly, because even my child, who has come from West Bengal to Karnataka, and I was basically thinking that when my child started speaking with his friend Kannada, I was amazed that how did he learn?
Correct.
Where I am struggling to understand that, how did he learn? So really said, and I agree to your point that yes, they have the capability much more than us. Maybe we have to change basically our mindset. And the next thing also comes as a question to us, how much your curriculum or this activity-based learning is compliant to the NCF, which is a very talked about subject right now.
Correct.
In whole India, in new education policy, the national curriculum framework that NCF has been prepared. How compliant is your curriculum according to that?
Yeah.
If you can just tell me something.
Absolutely. The NEP policy, is a wonderful policy that's come into picture, which has changed a lot of things. And the NCF, that's the National Curriculum Framework, clearly defines, clearly states that children in early years have to learn through play. That's been very clearly defined by NCF. It clearly states that children, and here it's foundational schooling, right? We have children between the age of 2 to 8 years now. Earlier it was 2 to 6 years, 2 to 8 years. The best method of learning has to be activity-based learning, has been clearly mentioned by NCF, and we have already been doing it. We have been doing it much before the NCF, makes it mandatory. We have been doing it for the last 30 years almost, and we have seen children learn.
Great.
And it's just that it's come into emphasis right now, and with parents also expecting it, schools also have realized it. But I think our curriculum very well so you can say the guidelines of NCF and the way that Kreedo curriculum works is very well matched, and everything which the NCF clearly states, Kreedo has already been doing that. So it's very
happy to hear
about it. Yeah.
Shobika. And even I have another question before we move into the another round. So I want to understand one thing, how your team, because this is something that, okay, yes, awesome, you have shown the activities, the way the child need to do. Definitely we can understand with 8 to 10 activities what you have shown. If the child can understand that level, what your 200 materials can do, miracle. But how your team is going to help our teachers implementing that in our school?
Okay. So this is where Kreedo stands out as a partner for any school. Is one, we are always academic partners to school, right? We provide a complete solution. So we demonstrated the material today to help say, and we have gone through a walkthrough of the different materials that we have. We constantly kept saying that activity-based learning also needs to be implemented in the classroom. So, and we know that we are experts in it. We have been doing this from a really long time. So we have a complete understanding. We've done our research and we know everything that needs to be done. So a similar thing we want to implement in our partner schools. And to do that, we have a very strong support system. While the materials are one part of it, it's a strong support system which will help schools implement activity-based learning. And what is that support system? Is we have a separate team which supports the school to make their school successful. That's by supporting them in training. We will provide teachers, we will provide teacher training to teachers. We will help them understand how each and every of these materials work, how to manage children in the classroom or in the lab setup. How do you manage multiple children with these materials? We will be training them on those lines. We will be providing constant WhatsApp as well as calls follow-up to see how the implement of schools happen, right from helping the school to understand how to manage a child in the initial few days, to how to help the child go through the portions, how do we finish the portions. We'll train the teachers on all of these levels. We'll also be we'll be providing a curriculum app which will have a detailed explanation of each of these curriculum. Not just that, we will be creating the timetable for the school. Now a lot of schools will already know how to create a timetable. Why do we create a timetable? Is because of the way the curriculum is set up. We need to ensure that every day the child goes through 1 hour of activity-based learning. So we will customize the timetable according to the customer's needs, according to school needs. We know there are certain set of activities the school needs to do every day. Along with that, we just plug in the critical part of Kreedo, how it works. So timetable is created by us. We'll train the teachers. We will provide a curriculum app which will have everything in detail, which will have the timetable, which will enable the school basically, which will have the timetable, which will have a planner, daily lesson plan. What should I do in the classroom today? What should I do in the lab? The teacher doesn't have to plan. We will give a set planner. The teacher just has to implement it, right? And further, to take it further, we also will be providing the schools with assessments and report cards. All of this can be generated to the
this is some critical part.
And not just stopping over here. When we say a support, it's not just academic support. Like we said, with solution providers, we'll help the school in addressing the parents. That's where the marketing happens, right? Marketing the school is with the parents. So helping the school do a parent orientation program to tell to orient the parents about the curriculum. And by the end of the year, to also showcase how their school did in terms of curriculum. We will help the schools implement that, while also supporting the schools with other marketing activities.
Fulfilling the commitment.
Yes, absolutely. That's where. So we have different stakeholders in a school. We have the parent, we have the child, we have the teacher, and we have the owner, and we ensure that we take care of all of these stakeholders through our support system.
Excellent, Shobika, and thank you for all the detailed answer. And I just wanted to tell everyone, and thank you everyone for being patient with us, listening everything. Hope it has really added value. And wanted to say this kind of activity-based learning definitely in your area might be you have not seen in so detailed activity-based learning environment. So it will make sure you elevate your school from all other school in your locality. Second thing, if parents who are going to step into your center, if they are going to be happy by seeing this kind of things, and definitely our team is going to train you, you know your admissions are going to increase. So this is something definitely our team is going to get in touch with you to ensure all your other questions are also answered. Thank you everyone and have a very good evening. And there will be one link will be coming to you all. You can schedule your meeting with our people for one-to-one discussion and take the things forward. So many people have told that, okay, how do we start it? Our team is going to get in touch with you to make sure you start your dream school with us. Thank you, everyone.